Many years ago, there lived an emperor. Far more concerned with his own appearance than ruling over his subjects, he spent much of his days commissioning new clothes and hairstyles to admire in the mirror. One day, 2 new strangers arrived at the great town where he lived and made their way to his palace, claiming to
weave the finest cloth in the land.
The emperor was of course intrigued and demanded to know more about these amazing robes. The tailors agreed to work for the emperor, but explained their fabric was quite unique, so magnificent were the colours and palettes that it would become
invisible to anyone unfit for their office.
Or
unusually stupid.
Exclaimed the emperor, those are just the clothes. Thinking how convenient it would be to recognise wise men from fools and discover those in his council unfit for their jobs. He immediately demanded his treasurer pay the large sum requested by the tailors, and they set to work. All the finest silk and gold thread they demanded was provided to them, as they set about weaving their remarkable fabric. But in reality, the expensive silk and thread was simply hidden in their bags while they pretended to work on empty looms. After a few days, the whole town was talking about this rumoured fabric, anxious to find out
just how unusually stupid
their neighbours were. Even the emperor was growing impatient, but feared even he might not be able to see the magical fabric, so decided to send a trusted advisor instead to check on the weavers' progress. The advisor cautiously entered the room where the weavers were working, and they welcomed him, inviting him to admire the
iridescent colours
and
intricate details
on the empty looms. Of course, the poor advisor saw nothing.
Can I be a fool?
He worried to himself.
Not a sulking no.
He decided, and so enthusiastically complimented the weaver's work.
So beautiful,
exclaimed the advisor.
What enchanting pattern,
he said, and when the weavers asked for more money and gold thread, the advisor agreed he would convince the emperor. When the advisor returned to the emperor with his description of the stunning fabric, the emperor knew he must see it for himself.
Hello.
But of course, when he entered the weaver's workroom, he also saw nothing. Like his advisor, he could never admit that
Nothing there.
for fear of being seen a fool, unfit for his own position, so said and demanded be made from the wonderful cloth to wear at a grand procession a few days from now. On the night before the grand procession, the emperor again visited the weavers so they could measure him for the wonderful clothes to be made from this magical fabric. They made great cuts in the air with their scissors and stitched together the clothes with invisible thread, all of it
so fine,
and
lighter than spiders' web.
And all the while, the emperor and his advisors oohed and ahed about the beautiful material, each trying to outdo one another with their descriptions of the colours and patterns, despite none actually seeing anything at all. The next morning, the weavers helped remove the emperor's old clothes and dress him in the new. As the emperor stood in front of the mirror, naked, his advisors all continued to compliment him on the
magnificent outfits
and also his frog impersonations. The noblemen then reached down and pretended to lift the long train of the robes, and the emperor began his procession through the town. The townfolk were just as anxious to see the fine clothes as the emperor was, but fearing being called stupid, they all called out to each other about the
wonderful clothes, how fine they are,
and how
perfectly they fit.
No one would admit aloud that in fact they could not see the fabric at all. Then, from the back of the crowd, a small child said, a little too loudly, to his mother,
"Why is the emperor naked?"
A buzz spread throughout the crowd as more and more of the townspeople realised the child was right.
We've been tricked!
They cried.
The emperor has no clothes!
The emperor shivered, now suspecting the townspeople were indeed right, but was far too proud and vain to admit it. He could do nothing but hold his head high and make his way slowly and quite naked back to his palace, where the 2 swindling weavers were well gone, with all the money and fine silk and thread they could carry.